All right. All right, should be live now. So if you guys could just give me a quick mic check and a video check, I'd appreciate it. All right, cool. So we've got Candy in the house. We've got Jeffrey Myers, Sickless23, Brandon from Mr. B's Fishing Things, Dan Slee. So welcome, guys. Slippery Fish Aquatics is here. Welcome. 54 Punchy's here. Hey Pam, how's it going? So, let me add the. All right, cool. All right, so we'll give it a minute or two to let some other folks join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, let me go ahead here and I'll flip to the weekly ad here real quick. So just so you guys know, especially since we're talking clownfish today, this is the 10th annual MBI workshop, July 26th to 28th at the Cranbrook Institute of Science in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. So looking forward to it as always. I hope you guys can make it. So let's see who else is here. All right, so it looks like we got 9 folks watching now. So let me go ahead and get started, and then we can run through whatever anyone misses as they come in. So, all right, so let's go ahead and we'll just talk about some basic things about clownfish first. So clownfish are members of the damselfish family. So they're related to all of the $3 damsels and chromis and things that you see at your local fish store. So keep that in mind when you keep these guys, because they can be a little aggressive. Not towards each other once you have a pair formed, but more of a, they can be aggressive a little bit towards other fish. So just keep that in mind. They're not like crazy. I mean, they're not super crazy or anything, but, or at least a lot of them are. There's a few that are, but most of them are not. But these guys, you know, something like these Ocellaris that you see here in the picture, they will defend themselves. So just keep that in mind. So that being said, kind of talking a little bit about the tank size, I keep mine all in 20-gallon highs. I've seen people keep them in as low as 5 gallons, like professional breeders. But if you're just starting out with these guys, I'd keep them in either a 20 high or 29 gallon. I wouldn't do a 20 long. The 20 longs kind of doesn't do much for them, because in their natural environment, the clownfish will normally not stray 3 to 4 feet away from their reef. So that's really something to keep in mind, is that they don't need a whole lot of space. They're not like something like a tang that needs a 6-foot tank. They can do just fine in a smaller tank. You could keep them in 10 gallons too, depending on your experience level. The one thing I do find with saltwater fish though, if you're not that experienced, bigger is kind of better. Gives you a little bit more room for air. So if you're keeping a small tank, Candy. Candy, yeah, but you don't like 20 lungs. Yeah. So, Larry's here. Welcome. Sorry, I was talking and not paying attention to the chat. Let me see who else is here. Island Queen's here. Hey, Darcy, how's it going? So, like I was saying, these guys are... yeah, Candy, I do not like 20 longs, but especially in this case, because they don't... I've tried them in 20 longs before, and it's a weird look and a weird dynamic for them. So, these I would do like in 10s, 20 highs, 29s. As we go through some more of the species, we'll talk a little bit more about the tank requirements for each one, because some of them are a little bit different. V-Stag and Lumpy Dog are here. Welcome, guys. So, so that being said, let's cover a little bit about tank mates, and then we can go into the individual complexes and species, etc. So, generally, like clownfish, I would keep them with anything that wouldn't eat them. So, I mean, you can keep them with tangs, angelfish, dottybacks, cardinalfish. So, anything like that. I wouldn't keep them with things like, obviously, like hamlets and groupers. Stuff that can fit that will eat them. So, same with, I know a lot of you guys are doing like freshwater, stuff. You wouldn't keep these like, compare this to like a guppy, because they are, in a lot of ways, becoming the guppy of the saltwater hobby. So, so if you wouldn't keep a guppy with an Oscar, kind of the same idea. If it fits in its mouth, won't, if it fits in its mouth, it'll go there. And things that have big mouths, like hamlets or that are just like super aggressive, things like triggers that will take your rock work and move it around, disturb their home a little bit. That's not going to fly real well. But in general, your general community reef fish, clownfish are going to be okay. Let's talk a little bit though about inner clownfish sort of relations, we'll call it. The way that I would do it is I would only keep. There's two ways you can do this to make it work. Like I said a little bit earlier, clownfish are damselfish, so they do have an aggressive trait to them. So, like, you can't keep two pairs of different species of clownfish in the same tank. It's just not going to work. The more aggressive species will kill the other ones. That's just how that works. So, for example, if I were to keep these with the pair of tomatoes I have, these would be dead probably overnight. The tomatoes are just a more aggressive clownfish, and they would take these guys out. So that's not something that you would want to do. So either you either do a large group of clownfish, like of the same species. Like, so I've seen a lot of people take the skunk clownfish and put 10 to 20 of them in there, and then what will happen is the most dominant fish will become the female, the next most dominant fish will become the male, and all of the other fish we'll call them non-functioning males. So if the female were to pass away, the fish that was the male will go and become the female, and at that point the fish that is the most dominant of all of the other non-functioning males would then become the male. That's called like Protangerous, I believe, and I'm sure I got that wrong. So, alright, so the next or the other way is to do it as a pair. So I would never go out and buy one clownfish, because the way that clownfish work, like I kind of just talked about, is if you buy two fish, the most dominant fish becomes your female, the lesser dominant fish becomes the male. And at that point, you would just basically have that, they'd form the pair bond, and that would be the two clownfish you keep in your tank. In my opinion, it doesn't matter how big your tank is. Unless you have a public aquarium, you probably can get away with it then. Like, that'd be different, but your average home aquarist is not going to have anything. Is not going to have the facility to keep more than one pair in a tank. I mean, my 240 has one pair of clownfish in it, for example. So, that being said, let me think of anything else that I've missed. I guess the one other thing I can say is that the vast majority of clownfish now that you can find in your local pet store are captive bred. So I would definitely, make sure you're getting captive bred fish. Make sure the fish are healthy. Make sure there's no ick, no velvet, any of that stuff. Your typical, what you would look for in a saltwater fish, when you're buying a healthy fish. Now, we are going to jump in a little bit to the species now. So I think there's around 30 species of clownfish when I looked this up. I've kept quite a few of them over the years, so I was able to compile some pictures at least of all the complexes, and we can talk a little bit about the fish that are in those specific complexes. So clownfish are divided up into 6 complexes. Those are the PERCULA, the maroon, the saddleback, the skunk, the clarkie, the tomato, and I think I got all of them. Yep, I did. So those are the 6. All right, so we'll just kind of start going through the complexes. So, all right, so we're going to start out with this one right here. So this is the PERCULA complex. This is your common, we'll call it the Nemo fish, but these are your ocellaris, your PERCULAs. The black ones that you guys see in the fish store are the like the black ocellaris that you will see in the fish store. Those are commonly called Darwin ocellaris. They come from Australia. They're closely related to your normal ocellaris clownfish. So just for reference, the one with the darker black on it is a PERCULA, and the other ones are ocellaris. So I generally can tell by their eyes. It's very complicated to tell them apart. Their eyes and their swimming motion. I find the perks swim in a little bit faster motion when they do the waggle than like an ocellaris would. So if you kind of look here, and I wish I could get the pointer to work on here, but if you look at the eyes on the one that has the black, you can see it's a little bit more gold. That's kind of, it's very, 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 we'll call it not, it's not scientific, but it is, that's how I've been able to tell. And I've been pretty accurate with it. But generally, these are the fish that are the least aggressive, or some of the least aggressive. These are the ones you can keep in the in the 10 gallons, the 20 gallons, 29. So these ones are not going to cause you any problems like that. These stay on the smaller side. The female may be getting 3-4 inches. The male getting maybe 2. So these stay a little bit smaller than a lot of the ones we'll talk about as we go forward here. They're generally diet-wise we didn't really cover, but they'll eat a variety of different foods. So you don't have to worry about that. They're pretty hardy. I said in somebody's stream one time that I had them down to 60 degrees in the 60s one time during a power outage event or a heat outage event. In the initial version of this barn, it was down in the 60s, and they weren't happy, but they all made it. So. Yeah, Josh is here. Hey, Josh, how's it going? It said the beady eyes. So, yep, that's kind of the way I would look at it too, is the beady eyes. So, all right. So it looks like we got 5 watching now. So, all right, let's go ahead and we'll rock on now to the. We'll start talking about the tomatoes. So these are the tomatoes right here. So these are the ones on, I don't know which direction so if you're watching the screen, let me pull this back up a little bit. Alright, the one on your left, they're called fire clowns. The other ones are your normal tomatoes. Those are the ones that are spawning in my fish room right now, are the ones that are on your right. These are a little bit more aggressive. So these guys get these guys can get a little bit more aggressive. The female tomato that's sitting in the front, kind of behind me in the screen, will basically she takes food right out of my hand, but sometimes she takes my hand with it. So these guys can get pretty aggressive. So like I said earlier, if I were to put this pair with the pair that we saw earlier, these guys would take care of them in short order. These guys are can be pretty aggressive. I've got these guys in a 20 high right now. They do okay. I mean, if I were to keep them with other fish, I wouldn't go anything smaller than like a 40 breeder. Give them somewhere to hide. But they're okay in their own 20 gallon by themselves. But this is breeding stock. But if you're keeping them in a community setting, then it's going to be a different ball game. So, all right, let's go ahead now. Anything else? I really don't have anything else with these. I mean, they're pretty hardy too. On the hardiness scale, they can take a lot. Generally, these include some of the other things too. There's like cinnamon clowns that are in this group. Let me see. There's something called, and you won't find it very often in the hobby. It's called a McCulloch, and that is, or a McCulloch's. That comes from Australia, and that fish is super hyper aggressive. I did run into the guy that runs ORA at a Macna a few years ago when they started breeding those, and he was basically telling me, he's like, "Hey, nobody wants these. You don't want these unless you're just a collector, because they're like literally, he'd have them in like a huge tank, and they chase down and kill the other one, kind of like cichlids. I mean, so those the McCullochs I would be careful with. Other than that." The rest of them are, aggressive, but not crazy aggressive from what I've found. So, all right, let's head on to the Clarkies now. So these guys, these are two of the rarer Clarkies that you'll see in the hobby that I have in this picture. The normal one that you'll find in your pet stores are the just the normal Clarkie. You may see some Bisinctus. They've come out with a morph called the Bisinctus clownfish, the Spot Cinctus. So that has some unique markings, but this is very. These two are very rare. The one on the left, unfortunately, I don't have either of these anymore. But the one on your left is something called the Echinodos clownfish, and that comes from Australia. And the other one on your right is called an Alardi, or an Allard's clownfish. That comes from around Africa. So these guys are very. These guys can be pretty aggressive too. I've heard stories of them killing their mates as well. So again, if you're keeping these like in a 20-gallon, you probably can get away with that. Obviously, depending on the temperament of the fish. This one, though, you'll find a little bit difference with the male-female size. The males and females will kind of stay closer to size. So a lot of times in the clownfish, I didn't mention this earlier, but the males will generally be much smaller than the females. But in this case, with a lot of the Clarkies, they're kind of close to the same size. So it's a little bit harder to tell. Keith Wardley's here. How's it going? JC Aquatics is here. How's it going? So, Clarkies are common. You'll find them in your pet stores. Again, this is another one of the more bulletproof species. We're gonna get to some of the more the more delicate ones here towards the end of this, and then we'll take some questions and talk some other stuff. So that's for the Clarkies. Let's go ahead and we'll talk about the maroons. And so the maroons are the only ones, if you start getting into the Latin names, all the Latin names of the clownfish are called, they're called Amphiprion. So, for example, the tomato clownfish was an Amphiprion frenatus. The Ocellaris clownfish is the Amphiprion ocellaris. PERCULA, obviously the Amphiprion PERCULA. But these have a different genus. So these are the genus Premnus. So this is Premnus bioculatus, which comes in a gold form as well as a white form. What you see here is one of the coolest fish that I have come across. Is the lightning maroon, and then the other side is just a normal maroon clownfish. I believe both of these are the white form. So there's white stripe and gold stripe if you're looking at common names. So these guys are aggressive, and I would not keep one of these in a 20-gallon tank. So this is the one where I would step it up to a 40 breeder, 55. Keep a close eye on it, because these guys, these guys are bad dudes. So Derek's here. Hey, Derek, how's it going? So yeah, the maroon clownfish, yeah, the maroon complex, which is just the maroon clownfish. Um, these guys have a bad attitude for sure. So JH Aquatics is here. Hey, how's it going? Uh, so so if we're talking the maroons, like I said, you want a bigger tank for these. You're not going to want to put them in the 20 gallon, especially when you're trying to pair them, because they're gonna do some nasty things. When I moved into this house that we currently live in, I had moved the old fish room, and when I moved the old fish room, basically it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I made a mistake, and I literally put a percula in with the maroon, and I woke up the next day 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and the percula was dead. You know, you move, you make mistakes, but you know, these are not to be messed with. They're kind of on my short list of the pound for pound nastiest fish around, which should be, you know, maybe a live stream topic someday. Unfortunately, I don't have the experience with stuff like dove eyes and stuff like that, which probably would make the list. Actually, one that would make the list that probably a lot of people wouldn't think of are dotty backs. So the saltwater dotty backs, those are almost next level nasty as well. If you're looking at pound for pound, I mean, those things will take on anything. So I don't know if Josh is still here, but I'm sure he would agree that, you know, there's some dotty backs that literally, like, you have to build, or all the dotty backs are, you basically have to build caves for them, or else, you know, you're going to have a death tornado. So, Jeff Rose here. Hey, Jeff, how's it going? So, we're going to get to the last two complexes here. So, the last two complexes, we're going to start off with the skunk. So, these are some yellow skunks. Not yellow, orange, sorry. So, coming up, sorry, I always forget about the lag. You have Josh's Dialectus dotty backs are nasty. I even think the purple ones are nasty too. Like, everyone, you know, they look kind of small, and they're like, oh, those are like little worm-like fish, and they're not going to do anything. Those things will, those things are bad. Those things are bad news if you're not careful. So these are the skunk clownfish. I find these to be kind of the more timid ones of the group. These ones are not very aggressive. These include like your pink skunk, your orange skunk. There's some other ones too, like a thelii, which is super rare. There's leucocrinos, which I'd have to like pull the internet up and show you what those are. Basically, it's like that fish, but it'll have a white kind of bonnet on the back of its head. Stuff too like the Negrippus, which is the blackfoot. So Sigless 23 misses his lionfish. I've never kept lionfish. I've never been attracted to them. And two, during a lot of my time in fish keeping, I've had kids. So I don't want my daughters reaching their hand in the tank and, have like the lionfish, sticking out of their arm, and it's like, you know what? I would do something like, poisonous. If I were to do poisonous fish, like the rabbit fish is okay. I mean, that's pretty, as long as you don't touch it, I think you're good. But lionfish has not been my thing. But the skunk clownfish, I find these to be a little bit more timid, taking a little bit more time to adjust to the tank. They are a little bit less tolerant of water conditions, I found. So if you're not keeping up on your water, these guys will let you know by like not being here anymore. So one thing a lot of people do with the skunk complexes that I've seen, like with the orange skunks especially, Mark Levinson from He Loves Reef has done this. He put a big group of skunks in a tank, had them host an anemone, and that was really cool. But a lot of these guys, I would say are a little bit more advanced. You definitely want to keep keep an eye on your system, be a little bit more advanced before you start talking with these guys. So let's go to the last one now, are the saddlebacks. So these include things like the saddlebacks, which come in a black and brown form. And then the other ones are like Latizinatus, I believe, is a... the sea bays are for sure. I think Latizinatus is too, if I remember correctly, is a skunk. Or not a skunk, sorry, it's saddleback. So the one thing I found with these guys is they're spooked really easily. Once they're settled in, they're fairly hardy, but these guys, if you put the net in the tank, if you mess with their stuff, mess with their decorations, I mean, they will just start going berserk, darting around the tank. So these ones you want to kind of keep in a quiet area. These ones too, I would kind of recommend a larger tank just because of their nature. So these guys, I would for sure keep kind of keep them on the keep them settled, keep them calm. Don't mess with their tank much. Obviously, if you're breeding them, like in this picture, I never got these to spawn, but if you were breeding them, obviously you have to take their pot out, but be quick about it. Don't let them, just don't stress these guys out, because they will get stressed pretty easily. But once they're settled in, they're not bad. They're just, like I said, they're a little bit skittish. So like the sea bays I always put those in larger tanks just because of that. And it's taken them a few weeks to a month to kind of warm up to the setting and not dart around the tank and kind of go berserk, and so they're very skittish. So those are all the clownfish. So I hope I didn't bore you guys too much with this. I mean, it's just more. This is in my like I've owned more clownfish than anything I've ever owned in the hobby. So I was kind of always debating on whether to do a video with this or to actually just come on a live stream one day and just talk about it. So I decided to do the live stream and just say, hey, this is all about clownfish. This is how I keep them. This is what you should do with it. Because I mean, I've been going for a good half hour now, and I've really not been answering a lot of chat. So, all right, Cyclist 23. How many saltwater tanks do I have? I have right now. There are 8. Right now, there's 10 saltwater tanks here in the barn. So there's 8. There's 8 saltwater clownfish breeding tanks. And then there's 2 display tanks downstairs. There's a 120-gallon plywood tank and a 245-gallon fowler, which is primarily like butterfly fish and a couple of Venusis angelfish, and there's a pair of clownfish in there too, which is a white stripe. It's a New Caledonian blue stripe, which is a tomato family as well. I do not have a reef tank at the moment. I have been debating that, if I want to do a small reef tank again or not. I kind of got a little bit motivated watching Corvus Oskin's video yesterday, or the other day when he went to the Reef Works and got the corals. So not Nola Jane was what? So about the reef tank, I do not have a reef tank at this time. I do have, I have done it before. There's a live stream I did about tanks of the past, so I have done the reef tanks before. I had a 180-gallon, which at the time I really enjoyed. So I should get back into it, but right now I'm kind of... I mean, that's the one thing, is I'm more of a fish guy than I am a coral guy, which is kind of rare for saltwater. It's kind of like I'm relating it back to freshwater. It's like the plant guy. Like somebody like, I'm going to use Bentley Pasco as an example. Like that guy is definitely, like he's a plant, I won't call him a nerd, but he's a plant expert, we'll call it. And, those kind of people generally are the same guy who is into corals. So I'm not trying to be, try to be careful how I say it, but someone who's like, if you watch Joel, right, he's deeply into plants and he has the reef tank with the corals. I mean, they're the same guy or gal. So, it's more, once you get into corals, you have to be real careful with your water. You got to test your calcium, alkalinity, magnesium. There are people who dose, if you depending how far down the rabbit hole you go on reef tanks, I mean, you can start dosing things like strontium, iodine. I've never gone that far. Generally, what I have done with my reef tanks is generally run it with a calcium reactor if I start really playing with corals. Not Nola Jane Fish Rich. No, it is not a nightmare. It's like anything, once you get it stable, it's not too bad. So the way that I would set up a reef tank, in order to dose the calcium and everything correctly, like I never really messed with strontium, iodine, trace element. That could get ugly. I mean, one of the things, especially in the reef world, is true of freshwater as well to an extent, is don't dose it if you can't test for it. So if you're dosing strontium, you better have some sort of test kit, which I've never seen. Maybe it's out there now to test for strontium. But the general three elements you got to really be concerned with are the calcium, magnesium, and alkalinity. So, yes, that is true. Cichlids 23. When I do the reef tank, or if I do the reef tank, the one thing I am going to test is I did find some Aquaneat reef lights that said they were for reef tanks. So I want to see how they work. They were a little bit more expensive than the freshwater ones. They were a little bit beefier, but they weren't crazy expensive. But I mean, if you want super expensive lights, if you're buying, what are they called? The Ecotech lights. The Ecotech LEDs. I'm sure those are great lights. I mean, I've used Ecotech products before, and they are very good products. But I mean, you're spending $750 to $800 a light, and that light's a 2 foot by 2 foot area. So if you have my 245 gallon tank, and I've asked the Ecotech people before at like a Magna to say, hey, I have this size tank. How many of these would you need? And they're like 4. No, I'm good. Thanks. I mean, like I said, so there are budget ones. There's if you go on Amazon, there's the reef breeders, and there's some other ones that are cheaper. Even the reef breeders now have kind of crept up a little bit. But, you got to look around for them. I mean, can't remember the name of them. They're like the Chinese budget reef lights. I mean, they're okay. People have tried them out and run tests on them. If you go poke around YouTube. With any light, you kind of get what you pay for, but those are not too bad. They're about $100 a piece again, and then those will light. Those will light your tank, the same 2 foot by 2 foot area. But I am a little curious on the Evergrow. Yeah. So Scully's House of Thrillers is here. How's it going? The Evergrow, yeah, there's some other brands too. So, yeah, there's quite a few different brands of LEDs you can put on a saltwater tank. But I do want to try the Aquaneat ones I have with some corals and run a little bit of a test and see if you can grow SPS, which are I'll just keep going down the rabbit hole with this, I guess. So basically, like when you're starting out with corals, kind of the same thing with plants, right? So you go to the aquarium co-op and you buy the cheaper plants, not cheaper plants, but the more beginner plants. So stuff like Vallisneria, Pogostem and Stellatus octopus, etc. So that kind of stuff. So same thing with corals, right? So when you start getting into corals, you've got your leather corals, you've got your zoanthids, you've got candy cane corals, stuff like that. Those are like softies. You have some LPS, stuff like frog spawn. They're called Euphilia is the species, but they're like frog spawn, hammer corals. Those are a little easier. And then you can get into the harder, they're called soft and hard corals, basically. And then you go into hard corals, and those are your SPS corals. Those are The ones that you imagine, like the reef, if you go out, you see the big plate coral, or like the staghorn corals and stuff like that. Those are the, well, they're called SPS, and those are the ones that really you need calcium for, because what they do is they'll take the calcium and they'll use that to form their structure and grow. So the more calcium you give an SPS coral, the more it will grow. I mean, given that everything's in balance, you know, like your freshwater tank, you know, it's all about the ecosystem and the balance. So if you keep your ecosystem correct and the balance correct, things will grow how they're supposed to grow, and then etc. So one thing I do want to hit back on the clownfish real quick, talk about anemones. In my experience, and I think a lot of people would agree with me on this, is that you do not need an anemone to have a clownfish. So it's kind of an old, you know, old wives' tale, I guess. You know, you need an anemone to keep a clownfish. I don't necessarily believe that. Most clownfish will do fine as long as they have some cover, and then they have somewhere to, you know, kind of to call their own. You know, for the, you know, in this picture here, they have their pot. So so I do want to give you guys a little update on the clownfish fry raising project. I don't have a picture up of it, but if you go to Joel's Corvus Oskin's Patreon, there is a picture of when the fry hatched the other day. I checked today. I've been feeding them, and I've started going a little bit now towards the dry food. But I have seen quite a few fry still in there, so we are on probably like day 4. I think they hatched Friday night. I think it was Friday night they hatched. So we're heading on day 4 now. Started them a little bit of dry food, along with the rotifers. So that is the Ocellaris pair. So we'll go back here real quick to not that scene. This scene. So that is the pair from these two fish, or the fry from these two fish. So they're coming along. They are tiny, but I didn't have a chance to get the picture up of those right now. But those guys are coming along well. I do have some tomatoes that I'm working on as well. Those should be hatching soon. I did pull the pot the other day, so those are real close to hatching out. So hopefully we can get some fry. I have changed it to a smaller tank setup. I believe we talked a little bit about that last week, but those guys are doing coming along. So hopefully I can get some metamorphosis and we can see some baby clownfish in here. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up now. We've been going for about 40 minutes, so we'll open it up to any other additional questions you guys have. We can talk freshwater, saltwater, reef tanks, or otherwise. So let's go ahead and we can ask away about clownfish. We can talk about anything else you guys want to talk about as well. We can talk about is anyone else, everyone hanging in with all the wild winter, all the winter weather. I know a lot of the country has seen, you know, death tornadoes, etc. So I've been watching a little bit and following along on this, the new. So baby clownfish would be totally cool. Yeah. So those will be on the channel here for sure once we get that going. So videos coming up here on the channel right now are, I did run a video, there's a video coming on Sunday about, we're going to do another food test. So we did test the Hikari Vibrobites, but we are going to run another food test, and that's going to air Sunday. So that'll be out Sunday morning. I'm kind of debating on the video for Thursday. Either it's going to be about the aquarium rack that we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, and that's done now. And then let me see what else. I've been working on a little bit of a DIY project that I might want to show you guys. So I came up with that the other day. So I may not have time to film it for Thursday. But that's kind of the two things that are going on. So, did anyone? We'll always do this, I guess. Did anyone get any new fish this weekend? Anything? Anything exciting? So, I didn't get anything this weekend. Kind of after the auction. Unfortunately, I did lose one of the rainbow fish. So, that's unfortunate, but happens. I'm really excited for the new Limia I got, though. The Limia sulphurophylla. Those are pretty cool. Really enjoy those guys. So we have 13 people here now. So I think what I'll do is I'll run back through the presentation. And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and I'll keep an eye on the chat. And we'll go ahead and just run through it real quick again. For those of you that just joined. So if we'll start here. So basically from keeping clownfish, you can keep them. I've seen people keep them in anything from 5 all the way up to 29-gallon tanks and larger, obviously. But I would recommend, my favorite clownfish tank is a 20-gallon high. So one thing I will tell you guys is that clownfish are related to the damselfish family. So a lot of the things like Hawaiian humbugs, your green chromis, your the little blue damsels that are $3 in the fish store, which turn kind of nasty as they get older. They're related to those, so they do have a side of aggression to them. So if you want to go over here, so now let me see. Otherwise, diet-wise for these guys, just give them good food. One of the foods I do like, especially since I'm breeding them, is the LRS not breeders blend, but it's the LRS Fertility Frenzy. And these guys do really well. I've had a lot better results spawning fish now that I've been feeding that. One thing I will talk about real quick here is tank mates wise. Generally, they are peaceful with your typical community reef fish. Much like in the freshwater, if it fits in its mouth, it'll eat it. So don't keep it with things like lionfish, big triggers, stuff that'll eat it or just tear it up. Things like hamlets too. Like hamlets are kind of groupers, things like that. Just generally keep them. If you're keeping them in a community tank, keep them with stuff that won't eat it. They'll live with tangs, angelfish, that kind of stuff just fine. So, one thing I do caution you guys though is due to the aggression, you guys do want to. So Josh has a question. Are there any clownfish you would like to see more popular in the hobby? Yes. And I'm going to grab a book. So, if you guys really want to nerd out on clownfish, this book right here is the anemone fishes and their host sea anemones. And this is by Gerald Allen, who's well known in both freshwater and saltwater worlds. But I will grab a picture, because what this basically is the clownfish field guide. So it has you can do like they're called trees, some sort of trees, I believe. So hold on, it's going to be story time now. They're called keys. So there's like something called an anatomical key in here. And so if it gives you a description, you can tell what kind of fish it is. So it's pretty cool stuff. But I will get a picture here for you once I find it. So, for example, if you look at the picture, I know this is low tech now. So, mob guppies here, so we're going extremely low tech. But if you look at that picture, those are all of the different Clarkie color variations at the time of this book. So So let me get back to Josh's question here. So there's quite a few like little like unknown species, right? So there's like Amphiprion chrysogaster, which is this fish right here. So that's the I believe that is called the Mauritian anemone fish, something like that. Stuff like the Chrysopterus. There's a lot of like cool looking little clownfish that people don't know about. You know, stuff like the Leucocrinos, like this too, like the Seychelles clownfish. So there's a lot of like really unique species out there. There's a lot of fasciatus, the Leucocrinos. So there's just a variety. All right. So now that Peter's here, hey Valley Fish, how's it going? So now that Peter's here, there is a Amphiprion telei, which is pretty rare. So so Peter will get why I'm saying that. So yeah, but going back to your question, Josh, the one I really would like to see, because I want to get another pair, is a Tristinctus. I really enjoy those. I really like the colors on that fish. Something that, you know, that has been captive bred. I know Todd Gardner did it. So, you know, and then some of those rarer ones I just kind of went through in the book. So, that being said, I do want to show you guys, if I can find them here, a couple of other books here, or at least one other book that you guys should, if you can get your hands on it. So this book is by Joyce Wilkerson, and this is the basically the Clownfish Bible. It's a guide to their captive care, breeding, and natural history. So these are kind of my two go-to books on clownfish. The Field Guide by Fountain and Allen, and then the Joyce Wilkerson book. So, can you keep shrimp with clownfish? Absolutely. Clownfish won't bother shrimp, hermit crabs, snails, that kind of stuff. Those are fine with clownfish. So, like I said, the things, I mean, I don't think of anything you really can't keep with them, other than like other clownfish. So I think where I was going with that is, like, if you, before we started answering Josh's question, is basically, if you want to keep more than one clownfish, you can either do it as a pair, or you have to introduce them all as juveniles at the same time. Or else, like, you can't put in, you can't put in, like, 2 tomatoes, and then 2 ocellaris, and 2 Clarkies, because you're going to have a death tornado. And if you want to do more than 2, I'm going to tell you to do it when they're small. Like, get a group from a breeder, or order them like from the Live Aquaria, Blue Zoo Aquatics, somewhere like that, and get a group. And then you'd want to, well, yes, good point, Josh. I was assuming your normal reef shrimp, not stuff like mantis shrimp. Mantis shrimp or something you'd want to put in their own tank anyway, for a multitude of reasons. So basically, if you want to cull your clownfish, you can put them with mantis shrimp, I guess. But other than that, I would not do that. So that being said, real quickly, I'm going to run through. Excuse me. We're going to run through the 6 complexes real quick. So the PERCULA complex are the your common ocellaris, PERCULAs, stuff. We'll call them Nemo, because that's what people recognize. These fish are generally smaller. The smaller fish will become. These are the smaller. And one thing I will mention, those who've been here from the beginning, I've already heard this, but the way that clownfish basically will sex out, it's by their social rank. So the most dominant fish will become the female, and the second most dominant fish will become the male. And if there aren't any other clownfish on the reef in that pot of clownfish, those will all be non-functioning males, we'll call it. And if the female were to pass away, then that male would become the female, and then the next most dominant male would become the next most dominant sub-male would become the male. HC Aqua's here. How's it going, Jesse? So, so basically, these guys stay smaller, about 3-4 inches max. But these guys are pretty hardy, pretty easy to keep. You can keep them in as small as a 10-gallon, even a 5. I've seen people do. But these are the ones. These are your basic. I would say this is your beginner one. They're not too aggressive. But generally following the general principles of, large group of young fish or a pair. So, all right. So we'll head down to the tomatoes. The tomatoes here are a little bit more aggressive. The females are a lot larger, getting about 5-6 inches or so. The males are generally smaller, maybe maxing out at about 3. These include fish such as the fire clown, which is the Amphiprion epipium. The tomato is Amphiprion frenatus. There is one that if you come across it, you need to be careful with aggression. It is called the Maccullochi clownfish. That comes from Australia. They are being captive bred by ORA, but there's not many of them out there, and you are going to pay quite a bit for them. But they have a bad attitude for sure. So tomatoes, you can still keep them in the 20-gallon. The breeding group I have, a breeding pair I have of tomatoes that have been spawning for me. Those guys are in a 20-gallon, no aggression issues for sure. Also, the tomato family, just so you guys know, include things like cinnamon clowns, like I said, the fire clowns, which are and then there's a few others as well. Like we said, the Maccullochi. I'm putting Nola Jane Fishrich to sleep, so. Yeah, Pam's is tonight. Pam, I apologize. I need to catch yours on the replay, but if you guys are staying up late in the East Coast or on the West Coast, please check out Pam at 54 Punchy's channel and check out her stream for sure. So she goes live. I don't know if it's after me, but it's past my bedtime, unfortunately, so I got to catch it up on the replay. So. Alright, so that's the tomato clownfish. So going on to the Clarkies here. The two that you'll see in the picture here are the Amphiprion echinodos, which is from Australia. The other one here is the Amphiprion alardi, which is from Africa. So, but generally you'll see something that's called the Clarkie clownfish. Maybe a Bicinctus, which there's a morph called the Spot Cinctus. So Pam is 2 hours from now. Yep, that's past my bedtime. That's midnight here on the Eastern time zone. So if you're a night owl, enjoy talking fish stuff, check out Pam for sure. So, also, if you guys want to help out Susan from SLC Aquatics, she is 7 away from having the 1,000 subs. So if you guys who aren't YouTubers know, there's a milestone for monetization at 1,000 subs and 4,000 watch time hours. So if we can get Susan there, that'd be cool. So appreciate it if you guys go check out her channel. But getting back real quick to clownfish, How do saltwater tanks handle power outages? The same as freshwater tanks. So basically, what you want to do, golden fish tanks here. How's it going? Peter Mon is here. How's it going, Peter? So power outages, it's the same concept as freshwater tanks. So you want to focus on oxygen. So just like your freshwater tank, you want to start running an air stone, running a circulation pump if you have one. So a lot of people like on reef tanks will run like the Vortec MP40, which actually comes with its own battery backup. But you want to get flow going. You want to keep the oxygen going, and then you want to focus on temperature. So if you focus, next thing you want to do is make sure you keep the tank at a reasonable temperature. I don't know if you were here earlier, Valley Fish, but I did say I have had clownfish go into the 60s before. Those, that wasn't for a huge period of time, but they did make it through that. So John Gonzalez is here from Massachusetts. So I'm here. We're here in Michigan. This is where the fish barn is in the Metro Detroit area. So, but generally it's the same as freshwater. You want to keep oxygen going. Salinity won't be an issue at that point. You will have some evaporation. It depends on your system too. So if you're running a bigger system, so if I'm running my 245 gallon tank, you won't have. I'm not going to worry about salinity and evaporation. I mean, if you're running a 10 gallon or like a Biot Cube. Oh, John's from Houghton Lake. Hey, how's it going, John? I didn't realize you were that close. I think I've seen you in Joel's stream. So everyone I think in Joel's stream is from Washington for some reason. It seems like there's a big local crowd in Joel's streams. So anyone noticed a slightly bloated fish before it got too late? AJ, are you talking saltwater or freshwater? If you're talking, I have noticed when I had one of the Swedish hongai and the tank behind me was bloated, so I started feeding just straight up spirulina. I've heard peas have helped as well. I've never done that, but saltwater wise, bloated fish. It could be egg bound, or it could be kind of like in fresh water. Maybe needs some more vegetables. So high fin red sword. Yeah, I would try the pea method, or try like just getting straight up spirulina flake. Something like this right here. I'll put it in the camera. This is cobalt spirulina. There's other spirulina too. I don't have it within reach, but there's I have some spirulina. It's called I think from Zumed. I think it's so. Reels Tanks is here. How's it going? So, all right. So we'll finish this up here real quick. She's just barely bloated, but she's my last one. Got a friend with a male and want to breed. Oh yeah, yeah. AJ, I'd hit this spirulina pretty hard. I'd just go straight up, spirulina for a while. Maybe even I've heard some people talking about maybe Epsom salt. But that's kind of what I would do. Like the hongai I had, I just straight up hit it with spirulina. So Clarkies we kind of hit already. So we'll hit the last few complexes here real quick. If you look at this one, this is the maroon complex. So this has your lightning maroon clownfish in it. This is basically the maroon complex is the maroon clownfish. You're not going to find anything else. Yep, AJ, no more dead fish for sure. It's not a good thing. So this one, the maroon clownfish is probably the most aggressive one of the group. So I would not keep a pair of these in a 20-gallon. This is the one fish that I would go bigger. I would go probably at least a 40 breeder, 55-gallon, because these guys do get pretty aggressive. But other than that, the one thing you will notice with these is the females get 6-7 inches long. I mean, they look like little bluegill, kind of. But the males will be like this big. It's kind of funny. So that's the maroons. We'll hit the saddlebacks real quick. Saddlebacks are generally a little bit more skittish than your normal clownfish. This is one too I would kind of get. I would give them a little bit more space as well, just because they're extremely skittish. You put a net in the tank and they dart around like the world's gonna end, basically. So these guys get spooked. These guys include stuff like there's a brown form, which you'll see here, and a black form of the saddleback. Be careful and watch the fish. So know your fish when you're buying the black saddleback. And just because a lot of people will call those like black perks or black perculas, and that doesn't exist. So there's a fish store that's about half hour away from here that calls them black perks all the time, and I just bite my tongue usually when I go into fish stores and I don't want to start trouble, but that's one thing to look out for. The one thing too is with sea bays and clarkies, they're often misidentified. So you got to really know your sources when you're starting to get into the rare clownfish, much like things in freshwater. So you got to be really careful with sea bays and clarkies, because they'll call them the trade will call them sea bays, but they're really clarkies. So you got to kind of see a real sea bay to know that to see it. It's not something it's hard for me to describe it, unfortunately, but it's the sea bays in the saddleback complex, but the clarkie, obviously, it's its own complex. But some of the colors get pretty similar, and so knowing locations and things like that would help. Snowflake eel. Snowflake eel. That one, I've never kept eels. Snowflake eel. I'm gonna say I don't know. I'm trying to think if those are like morays or if those are like the smaller, like Japanese eels. But if it's like a moray type eel, it'll get pretty big. It'll get, So, but if you're talking like the little Japanese fire eels, or I can't remember exactly what they're called now, but those ones don't get as big. I had one about 15 inches, and he fired out of the tank at night, found him curled up 2 days later. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah, that stuff, like eels, you're going to have to keep lids on your tanks for sure. Just keep it, HC Aqua, I'm going to show you what you feed baby clownfish, actually. So, let's hold on 1 second here. So, baby clownfish do not eat I don't think they would eat microworms. So, I'll be right back. I'll show you what you feed them. All right. All right, so we're back. And I don't know if the camera will pick this up or not, but if you see all the little specks swimming around in there, those are called rotifers. And those are what the baby clownfish will eat. So what they'll do is basically they will eat the... these are about... probably about, say, 150 microns or so. And then we'll put that down for a minute. And then you actually have to create the whole ecosystem for the rotifers as well. So this stuff is called algae complete. So it's an instant algae. So what you would really want to do is we're going to just kind of demonstrate a very, very makeshift rotifer culture. So this is your rotifer culture, and you just want to tint it green. And then obviously you'd have an air stone in here, but the rotifers will eat this microalgae, and then from there, that's how the rotifers will reproduce, and then the clownfish will reproduce from there. So that is basically a micro rotifer culture, and then you obviously, like I said, you have an air stone in there. But I actually did do a video, I think it was last Thursday, on how to culture rotifers. So if you want to check that out. So, yep, HC, you do need a starter culture of rotifers. So where you want to get that from is a company called Reed Mariculture. And let me grab you a link for you. So, so there is the rotifer starter kit, and then yeah, so that's it right there. So that's the rotifer starter kit. You get that from Reed Mariculture. They're kind of the leaders in fish in that market for things like rotifers, the rotigrow. They've been doing that for years. They do that commercially for commercial hatcheries and stuff as well. They have their line of food as well. As you progress through it, I'll show you some of this stuff too. I got this at the MBI conference, which we'll talk about in a minute. But this is top-dressed otohime. So this has astaxanthin in it, what you can use to feed the clownfish. So, for example, for this food right here, it's like A, B, C, D, E. Excuse me. So this one is like 250 to 360 microns. So as the larvae will grow up, you want to increase the size of their food. So I am right now. I just started today feeding a little bit of the A. Oh, Candy, thank you for posting the MBI workshop. We'll get back to that here in just a minute. So yeah, so that is basically how you would get the culture going. What I'll do with my sample that I just showed you is I'll just dump that back in the tank. I have to feed the rotifers anyway before I go back into the house and go to bed, so I'll do that on my way in. So we've been going now for a little over an hour. Do you guys have any more questions? We can talk saltwater, clownfish, anything you want. I can go till 10:30 if you guys want. It's up to you. I don't know if there's anyone going live at 10 or not. I don't want to obviously go over my time, but I am here if you guys want. To. So I will plug the MBI workshop here again real quick. All right, so the MBI workshop is, yep, I will not be up at midnight. So MBI workshop is celebrating 10 years this year. That's where I got all of that food from. What that, basically, that is a saltwater breeding conference. So, for example, the person who first bred the yellow tangs out in Hawaii, they came and spoke about how they did it. Same with the person who bred the Regal tangs, Dr. Kevin Barden down at the Florida Aquaculture Lab. So he bred those as well. So it's a cool event. You get to learn a lot, meet a lot of people. So I mean, that's where I gained a lot of the knowledge on like fish breeding, clownfish, stuff like that. Is these people right here. So if you're in the Bloomfield, Michigan area, can make it out this way, definitely come out to it. It's a great event. So we got 13 on now. So let me see. Jeffrey Myers, the old man lost everything easily, $3,000 in fish, one by one, and still ate his food. Angels, coral beauty, clowns, damsels, filefish. What kind of filefish do you have, AJ? Because I don't know how long ago this was, but if he nope, Pam, I will not be staying on until midnight. I've got to go to work tomorrow. If we were doing this on a Friday night or something, we might try that, but I am not going to stay on until midnight. So, I usually go to bed about 11. So, usually hang out in here, edit videos after the kids go to bed. So, let's see, anything else? So, we went through, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it was a little long. Just going through the various complexes and stuff. It's a lot of information to go through. But I hope you guys learned a little bit about clownfish. So we'll give it another couple minutes if you guys have more questions. Monacanthidae. Okay. Do you know the common name by any chance? It's not an orange spot then. There's your what hurts LFLO? Oh, I don't think anything hurts. Not yet. I'm not that old yet. Getting there though. Let's see. Alright. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up here, guys, unless you guys have any last questions. I do appreciate you guys coming out. This was kind of, Mike's going to dork out stream a little bit. So this is like my, one of my passions is clownfish. So I do need to get some more, since I've gotten the breeding really going now. And so the breeding's been really ramping up here in the fish tank barn. So Peter, I appreciate you coming out. I think this might be your first time in there. Hispidus. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never heard of that, AJ. I'll have to look it up. HC Aqua, thank you. So if you guys don't have any other questions here, I'm going to shut it down. But, check out some more videos if you like. We're going to be on, we are on every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern time. So with that being said, catch you guys on the next stream. So videos will come out Thursday and Sunday. So with that being said, have a good night, have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again.